Welcome to Wellness Rebranded, the podcast where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist get together to explore health and wellness from 3 different healing perspectives. I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
I'm Maria, licensed mental health therapist.
And I'm Tara, personal trainer. We believe in finding ways to nourish a healthy relationship with our mind and body, eating for well-being, not weight, finding joy in moving our bodies, and embracing and understanding our emotions. We are here to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and yourself.
How great would it be if you got science-based guidance from qualified professionals instead of trying out conflicting, overhyped, and unproven trends?
If that sounds as awesome to you as it does to us, join us every week as we dig into strategies to enrich and enhance our day-to-day life and health.
And let's start rebranding your wellness journey.
Hi, this is Elizabeth. I'm hosting a brand new masterclass to support you with gentle nutrition. It's loaded with guidance to eliminate the confusion around healthy eating created by diet culture, while also showing you how to build balanced, nutritious, and delicious meals and snacks without feeling restricted or deprived. We'll cover smart snacking tips, and I'll share strategies to help you be more meal ready with less stress. If you've been wanting to boost your nutrition and feel empowered around food and healthy eating, this workshop will show you how. The live class will take place on April 10th at 6 p.m. and is just $45. There will be a replay if you can't attend live. I can't wait to see you there.
This episode contains sensitive topics including suicidal ideation, psychosis, and depression. Listener discretion is advised, as these discussions may be triggering or disturbing to some individuals. And here we are on another episode of Wellness Rebranded. Welcome. This is Maria. I'm here with Elizabeth and Tara. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Brenda Brown. And Brenda is a friend of ours. And this is a good story because I actually met Brenda not too long ago at a coaching event. And we started talking. I don't even know why, maybe because, the universe was playing in her favor. But we started talking, maybe related to coaching at the beginning. But then for some reason, we shared how each of us at the beginning or through motherhood, especially the first years, we shared how it was very hard for us. And we started talking about postpartum depression. And it was a connection right away. In my case, I felt heard and happy to find somebody who lived something similar to the struggles that I experienced when I was, new to motherhood. So we started talking about that, and I said, Brenda, I need you on the podcast. Please come, and here we are. Brenda is a life coach, and she supports people's journey in taking compassionate action, which is so important in many things that we experience. So we thought, what a better way to bring somebody who can share her experience and show us, or together find a way of how she rebranded her wellness through her experience. Brenda, welcome, 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 welcome.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for the invitation to be a guest here. I've been a fan of Elizabeth's work I think since the beginning. I had to have been one of the first few people to sign up for your newsletter. And I've been
you were.
Yes. And I was grateful to meet Maria. We actually met during the pandemic. It was short, but then we got reconnected and got to really get to know each other a little more recently. And Tara, I'm really excited to meet you too, and learn more about your work. So so I'm here as to help if there's anyone listening that's had any kind of question around what they need to do during this time, or at any time when they're struggling. I just want to help light the path.
And thank you so much for that. So Brenda, if you share with our listeners, because I remember talking to you, what stayed in my heart was to listen a little bit of your experience. I guess let's start there. If you can share with us how this journey of helping other women, and we'll talk about that. That would be the second part of your experience, is how you later on helped so many women going through symptoms or postpartum depression itself or anything along those lines. But how did it all start? How was it for you experiencing this?
Sure. I have two children. They're emerging adults now, 22 and 24, but it's I'm pretty sure it started when I had my first child. He was a premature child, and was in the hospital. So I left the hospital without him, and I went through a long period of just, I didn't sleep well, and I had a lot of symptoms of anxiety and probably some depression. But once he came out of the hospital and was healthy, I seemed to recover naturally, and I seemed fine. But with the birth of my second child, which was about almost 2 years later, her birth was actually full term and very healthy, but I was not healthy. There was something going on inside of me that just felt off. And I remember calling my primary care doctor, or my OBGYN, and asking to have a thyroid test to see what was going on, because I figured that's what it was. I'd felt like that before. And so they did thyroid, and they're like, it's fine, you're fine. And I'm like, I am not fine. Something is definitely not normal. And it just started to progress, like with it was like an angst. And then I just kept feeling like I didn't want to leave my house. And if I did, I got nervous. I remember being at Kinderfarm Park with both of them, to under the age of 2, and just feeling like I couldn't, like I was worrying about it. And it was definitely, looking back, not a normal amount of worry or fear. So that was, that there were symptoms and signs of something that was not normal, but I didn't know what was. I just figured I wasn't handling life, I just kept saying, I don't know what's wrong, but it feels like I can't handle 2 children. And felt like it was some reflection on my capacity as a parent. That's all I knew, is I didn't feel right.
I mean, that's just a really relatable story for me. My son was full term, but spent a couple of days in the NICU, which in NICU terms is not that much, but it still felt so odd to me to have a baby and then go home from the hospital without him. Like, wow, was that real life the past 9 months? Did this actually happen? And while I didn't struggle with postpartum depression, my postpartum anxiety was really a new feeling for me, for sure. And my story is that my doctor was just kind of like, yeah, you're a mom, welcome to being anxious for the rest of your life. It's like she didn't take it incredibly seriously, and luckily I came through it fine. But I realized that's not the way it should have been, and it's not the story for many women. So I'm really glad to have you on the pod today to share what you've learned throughout your experience. It feels really relatable to me.
And I love, Brenda, how you said, even though other people were telling you, oh, you're fine, when we know, we know. And nobody's going to know more about yourself than yourself. And the 3 of us, have talked about that connection with yourself here in the podcast before, and how important that is, because you knew at that moment that something was off, like you said, and that you needed help, and you were reaching out for that help. So what happened next? You go through that. Do you reach out for help? What happened? And when do you decide to shift, or not shift, but to add to your journey, helping other women?
Well, I will share that for me to get help was painful, because nobody really knew what was wrong, first of all. And they just thought I needed a therapist to talk through this transition. So I got the names of therapists, and I made appointments immediately. And I met with I made appointments with 3, all in all. And I met with 2 of them twice, and once. They were very kind. But the approach was to talk about my past, and to really understand, my own, they were really looking for a reason for what I was struggling with. And it just, in the meantime, I was feeling more and more anxious, like there was something, wrong beyond. I don't know if I'd ever had therapy before, but I'd certainly been at like a counseling session with my family or somebody. So I kind of understood that process, but it just kept getting worse and worse. So what I did was I started talking more with friends. And through that, I got connected with a woman at my church that had postpartum OCD. coincidentally, she had done a show for like 2020 because she was like a minister and she was having these really scary thoughts. And they did a segment on OCD and she was one of the people spotlighted. So she talked to me and she was asking me about scary thoughts and I really wasn't having any. So then I thought, well, I don't have postpartum depression, or that's what she was talking about. And then there was also Andrea Yates, if you may remember, a couple of months before my daughter was born, that had just happened. So that was my other example. And that scared me even more, that, oh my God, if that was in the back of my mind, but I still was like, what is wrong with me? So long story short, that friend from church, she ended up connecting me with her therapist in California. And we talked over the phone. This is way before telemed was really a thing. And at one point, as it got worse and I started having panic attacks, we called her, my husband and I called her. Fortunately, it was like 10 o'clock here and it was 7 o'clock out there. And I'll never forget because she got on the phone and she was like, that's the first time she used the words, you have postpartum depression. Then the race was on to try to find help here locally.
First of all, I'm so sorry that you went through that and that the help was not readily available as one might think it would be. But it's such a story of persistence and resilience in the face of adversity, right? You knew and you had to keep searching. Really
I feel like there's a
powerful.
couple things that stuck out to me about that. Is like, one, it shouldn't be that hard to find help for this. Like, this is such a common thing that new mothers experience. It should not be that difficult to get someone to believe that you're feeling what you're feeling. The second thing is that, like, having a friend group that is supportive, it can be life-saving.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's
Here's the
great that you
thing.
had that, and shitty that you had to have that.
If you're local to the Annapolis area, join me on my new initiative, the Emotional Fitness Studio, a place where everyone can enjoy monthly in-person wellness workshops guided by different local providers and as affordable as only $10 per event. These interactive, wisdom-packed and empowering sessions will prove that taking care of our mental health doesn't have to be a tough nut to crack. Check out all the offerings and register on the events section on my website, thecoachingtherapist.com. It makes me think that also one thing that we encounter with this is that many of the symptoms that we experience with motherhood come with motherhood, like lack of sleep or difficulty sleeping or loss of interest or energy or fatigue, that maybe people can attribute to just being a new mom, but they can also be symptoms of depression. And we'll talk about the symptoms in a minute. I think, as you know, to educate people out there that if you see any of these symptoms, to pay attention, because it happens that we don't talk many times about this symptom. And I think I've said this before, we are expected as moms to see the joy on this new phase of our lives. And when it's not there, it feels lonely, and maybe we don't want to reach out because maybe we're going to be seen like these weird women that are not enjoying motherhood. How can you not, when you brought the miracle of life into the world? But that's not the reality for everyone. So we don't talk about it, and therefore it's hard to get the help. Even if it's not the postpartum depression, in this case, we're talking about the diagnosis specifically, but for many moms, there's no diagnosis, but the symptoms are there. We don't even have to give it a name. As long as you're feeling that you notice those changes, and these changes are affecting your day-to-day life, including the way you are relating or taking care of yourself and your kid, it's important to reach out for help. So Brenda, what happens next? I'll ask again. It's like, I'm just so, interested in your story. I'm like, tell me more.
Yeah.
So you got help after some struggle, you got help, and what happened next?
Well, I didn't get help right away. I mean, it was hard, even with the diagnosis. That's what's and I still see this with people here, because we know with supply and demand right now with resources and then with medical plans, et cetera. But I finally found a psychiatrist, and she was able to prescribe a medication, and within I'd say 3 weeks, I started to the kind of, the worst of it started to lift. And I might have had a therapist at that point, but, I had a pretty strong network of friends and I was very close with some people at my church. So I had a pretty strong group. So I had that, but it took some time to really kind of come out of that. And once I did, though, it was even more clear, like, this is really so wrong that anyone should have to. And I immediately thought of people that didn't have the resources that I had and the ways that I was able to connect with people. And yeah, it was a journey. I mean, there was some really deep, dark moments of even in once I got the diagnosis from then till the medication really started to work and I was able to be outside and get my life kind of feeling like I was normal enough to be parenting. There were some scary moments I don't want to say anything too triggering for anyone, but
We can put a trigger warning, but I think it is important to say that sometimes these symptoms can come maybe with suicidal ideation, even, dark thoughts, like you were saying before. And if there's anybody out there experiencing these, first of all, I want them to know they're not alone. And it's something that we can get help with the thoughts. You mentioned Andrea Yates, and people can Google what that case was, but it was postpartum depression not taken care of. That evolved and got worse to the point of ending in a tragedy, right? And not that we're saying that all symptoms, when they get worse, are going to end in a tragedy. Please, not at all. It's not cause-effect situation, right? But we could use that example to show the importance of taking care of symptoms, because many times we minimize them or think that we can do it alone. And why? When we're in a country that has so many resources, even if it takes a long time to get to them, there are resources and it's important. Feeling well is important. Motherhood is not synonym with suffering. And it can show us that we have to put ourselves first and our mental health first in order to do anything, really. But in this case, motherhood.
I love that you just said like motherhood's not synonymous with suffering. I think that's really powerful because as I'm like in the thick of toddlerhood, it does feel like that's what my friends and I talk about a lot, is how much like everything is hard right now and a lot of things suck and it's worth it and cute and loving, but also it feels like motherhood is synonymous with suffering sometimes. Like that's a really poignant reminder.
And what's coming up for me too is what you said is not only do we not need to suffer alone, the longer we wait and to get treatment, to get help, the harder and the longer it is to feel better. It's just, that's what happens. So I actually believe Andrea Yates was postpartum psychosis, which is that's a medical emergency immediately if you have any kind of questionable thoughts like that. But in my case, it did begin as anxiety and it led to a depression. And there have been all kinds of different studies and whatnot. I don't know about the current literature, but that's important to notice that what's happening now, the sooner you get help, the sooner you'll be able to feel normal and enjoy your life.
That's a question that I get a lot. There's a lot of misunderstanding of what psychosis is. And it's basically losing touch with reality. That's a person that is either experiencing hallucinations or delusions, which means that they believe something that is not there. People sometimes associate psychosis with, being in a bad mood or being aggressive. It has nothing to do with that. It's mainly losing touch with reality, which is what happened with her. But she started with postpartum depression, and then symptoms got worse to the point of elevating to become psychosis. So again, not that all symptoms of depression are going to end in psychosis, but just a sample that taking care of our health right away can bring a better prognosis than if we wait, like you were saying.
One of the reasons we wanted to have you on having this particular conversation and thinking about how we're rebranding wellness around it was just to actually have the conversation and take away the shame that often comes along when people are struggling with things like these, or mental health, or really any kind of struggle with our health and well-being. And so I think it's particularly poignant that part of what led you to the help was actually sharing more of what you were feeling with some of your friends and your circle, right? Without that, it might have taken you even longer to get the support and the help and the diagnosis that you needed to move forward. So I think it's an important part of the conversation to point out.
Yeah, and the shame is that I'm glad you named that, Elizabeth. That is what will cause all the anxiety. I mean, that's the experience of feeling like you're not enough. So yeah, reaching out. And I really didn't probably share as honestly with my closest friends, honestly, as I did with people that I was in like my groups at church, because they were older and I didn't want, because my friends were all they were mothering and they had so much going on. I didn't want to bother them. So, and they were reaching in to me and asking, but they were busy and you don't necessarily see it. And I put on a really happy face. And I will say that was when I really did get, I was starting to have suicidal thoughts. It was going to public, like going to church or going to a social event. I would get extremely anxious and it was like I wanted to get out of my body. And I got very dark really quick. So and it was that whole struggle with I need to show up and I need to be this way, and inside I felt terrible and I just wanted to stay home.
We talk about that sometimes. We call it shooting all over yourself. And it feels like motherhood is a time when we should all over ourselves all the time, even though our babies don't even care. Like we're not doing it for them, we're doing it for everybody else, but it feels like we should be doing it for them.
Yeah.
Vicious cycle.
Most of us haven't had a notebook or a workbook on how to become moms and how to navigate that time. It's such a transition.
Funny you bring that up.
Oh.
I had no idea this is where the conversation would go, but Maria and Elizabeth and I, along with many other authors, are actually writing this book, and it comes out in April.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of taking it was kind of my brainchild. So all the things that I really struggled with when I became a mom, I thought like, this is ridiculous that I'm having to like figure this out alone. And like all the things that had changed and taken me away from feeling like myself, kind of how to get back to feeling like I used to, right? Like I'm a mom, cool, but also I'm still me. So we're doing a chapter. Maria's writing on like mental health for moms, and I'm writing on returning to exercise, and Elizabeth's writing on nutrition, of course. And we have all these different components to it. So the book is coming. Be excited.
That's awesome. Because, this was 20 years ago. So I had like, what was that book that everybody read? That one book,
What to
expect when you're expecting. That was it, and,
is there even a mental health chapter in that book? I had it too, and I don't remember. Is it? Like,
I think there is.
There is.
I think I dog-eared a couple of the, or highlighted. There were a couple of things to make sure you call. There's an emergency. I don't remember reading about it. Maybe it's in there, but
because this is one thing that comes to mind talking with you guys today is we need more spaces to talk about mental health struggles during motherhood. Is something that is so common and frequent, but we still don't have, it's not balanced, the amount of how this happened and how many spaces we have open for this. It doesn't make sense, right? And it makes me think, several years ago, the hospital I work at had a group for moms who were struggling emotionally during or after motherhood, and the group closed I can't remember why. Maybe the therapist they had couldn't do it anymore, so I took over, and it was great. It was a group at no cost, support group, and it felt so good, to be honest, not only as a therapist that I was guiding the group, for personally sitting down with these women openly and compassionately with each other, talking about real struggles that we didn't have the space to talk about it as often as we were experiencing these symptoms. So again, if this episode, opens the door for something, is please more spaces to talk openly about this, because already talking about it can have a huge impact. Finding a tribe of moms that you can say, I'm not enjoying motherhood, I don't want to get out of bed, and there's my baby crying, and I just cannot emotionally do it, and that being okay, saying it without judgment, without any criticism, that's needed and important.
Yeah.
So Brenda, I know that one thing that you specialize in your work since then is transitions. So I would love to sort of hear about how you transitioned that experience into something bigger than you.
Thanks for asking. It really unfolded pretty organically, but I was pretty fired up, about the whole situation. So when I was able to reach back out to the people that I had initially started to get help from, to reconnect and say, how can I get involved in helping others? The organization called Postpartum Support International, that's still here, they pointed me to a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. that had just gotten a lot of money to do a grant with for postpartum depression. And I also was involved in the Maryland chapter of PSI, but through that organization, I was able to get involved with education for providers. Also, we had the funds, so we had a group of moms that were just mostly moms. There were some therapists, but mostly just moms of different professions. And we were all trained at Hopkins for it was a peer facilitation model to do support groups. And we actually did help start that first group at the hospital here at Luminous. And there were probably 6 others initially. I'm not sure how many are still standing. Part of the money went also into a warm line, which is still in existence. It's 800 PPD moms. And we worked with 1-800-SUICIDE. The man that founded that, his wife actually tragically took her life after losing their first child. And he always wanted to help families and moms who were struggling, but there was such a need for that work with young people that he got involved with. He went that direction, but he was instrumental in helping us. So all in all, I just kind of I went back to where I was looking for help and reconnected, and I'm here. So I went from actually literally answering phones and helping people in crisis. I mean, I wasn't a crisis counselor. We would connect them to the crisis counselors, but we were like the moms on call, moms and dads.
Oh my goodness, Brenda. So probably you were the one starting those groups at the hospital that I did, afterward. Like, I mean, if this is 20 something years ago, or at least more over 15 years ago, maybe you were the one, and that's amazing.
It wasn't just me by any means, but there was, I did do one of Annapolis. So here again, the universe, I was walking at some point with one of my mom friends from St. Anne's. And we were literally walking, and I'm telling her about my journey. And she says, oh my gosh, well, you need to meet. And it was Fred Gukas, who is one of the doctors with Annapolis OBGYN. So she introduced us, explained my journey. Her husband had founded Annapolis OBGYN. And so we connected with their midwife at the time, Vicki Long, who's no longer there practicing. But that was the beginning of the work that we did with the hospital. We did like a grand rounds. We did, different education. So that was I worked at various hospitals all over Maryland and Virginia, but that one was, of course, most important to me, that we had something here.
I love that kind of came like full circle with you starting some groups and Maria taking over some groups. And, regardless, there's support for moms everywhere.
Yeah, there was a woman there named Allie. I don't remember her last name, but I just remember she was like an angel, and took it over. I mean, took it on, and there is help. We just have to keep looking.
Brenda, how was it for you thinking about rebranding our wellness? What was the impact on you to experience what you experienced, and then finding a way to help other people that were maybe going through a similar situation? How was the impact on your healing and your journey to do that?
Well, I'd like to believe the whole experience was healing and empowering and divine in some ways. I also feel like, to be honest, that it was a bit of a way of redemption, I guess, of like, I look at me now. I mean, there was a little ego in it. I think I was looking to kind of create something out of the storm. But I did really want to, it was all done with a real intention to help others. But I will say, somebody gave me some really good advice. They said, do you want to be fireworks or a lighthouse? Because I was literally working, full time I was a volunteer, but working in all these different things. I was lobbying, I was doing state and federal, like I was getting involved in all kinds of things because it was just, postpartum depression was really coming to the surface at this point. So I burnt out, and after I guess 10 or 12 years, I really started to refocus, and my kids were getting older. I got involved in the PTA, PTSO and whatnot. And it was only when I began my own journey of healing, really, of my own kind of some deeper stuff, deeper stuff, I really looked at, reaching out to a coach. had therapy, and I'd also got connected with a coach. And that was where I began kind of exploring my own kind of path of transformation. That was when I really would say I got clear on who is Brenda and why are you here? Not that motherhood isn't an incredible journey, the only journey that really matters for me at the end of the day. That's what matters. But they're to help others, I hope I have a number of years left on this earth to do that. So
I love that expression that you shared. Do you want to be fireworks or a lighthouse? That's like, so applicable in so many situations, right?
yeah.
That caught my attention too. Like, it seems like it might be more fun to be a firework, but also way more helpful to be a lighthouse.
Yeah. And I think we can do both. I think that's what I work, when I'm working with my clients, I try to help them see that what they're going through right now might be something urgent. And they can also still hold, like, what do I deeply desire in the near future, in the short-term future, long term.
Brenda, if our listeners could have one takeaway or one message, if we could summarize this in one message for our listeners, what would that be?
Just to trust that you are a whole creative being. We learn that in our, that's our kind of mantra for coaching. And it really does matter that you care enough about yourself to reach out. That's the most important thing. And that you don't need to do it alone. The sooner you get help, the sooner you'll start feeling better and be able to be the kind of parent that you want to be.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think it's a really important and powerful conversation. Can you, as we wrap up, let people know what you do now and where they can find you?
Well, I do work. I have an office in West Annapolis, and I also go off-site with people. I love to get out in nature and do there's some really wonderful spaces to just do some outdoor coaching. But I also work on Zoom and phone, with people across the state lines and whatnot. My information you'll probably put in the show notes. But yeah, I work with men and women. I've worked with teenagers. I work with I've got some clients in their early 70s. So yeah, I really do love to work with people who are really, they're in a transition. They want to make a transition. I've had a lot of my clients since I started coaching, and then but I love working with new.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for being here with us. I appreciate you accepting the invitation. I appreciate you modeling for all of us and our listeners the importance of showing ourselves vulnerable, because sometimes if you and I wouldn't have been vulnerable that day, we wouldn't have connected as strong as we connected. And I've tested that with the years. When you show yourself as you are and the experiences that you have and you own them and share them, it connects people at a different level that at the end is more lasting than any other connection. I think that's just me. So for our listeners, if any of you are experiencing any of the following symptoms, please reach out for help. This is okay. Help can be available. If you experience any depressed mood or severe mood swings, excessive crying, difficulty bonding with your baby, withdrawing from maybe family and friends, loss of appetite or changes in your appetite, inability or difficulty sleeping, overwhelming fatigue or loss of energy. Maybe you experience reduced interest in some things that brought pleasure to you before, intense irritability or anger, fear that you're not a good mother. We all have that fear, but if it's becoming, to a point that is interfering with your day-to-day life, or feelings of hopelessness, suicidal ideation, feelings of worthlessness, shame, guilt, please reach out for help. It could be with a professional, it could be with a friend. Tell someone how you're feeling. And like Brenda says, don't stop until you find the help that you need and you deserve, even if it's taking more effort than desire. Please, please, please look after yourself. So Brenda, how does it feel to be talking about this? You said at the beginning that it's been many years and, it's kind of something you've left behind. How does it feel to be talking about it again with us?
I'm smiling because it feels like I'm actually like getting reconnected with an old friend. And that's how I guess I can know that I'm healed and it's not still something that's needing attention. Yeah, it feels really, really good. I do know that I was looking at the statistics, and when I was first diagnosed, it was approximately 1 in 8 new moms would have postpartum depression, and now they say 1 in 7. So for whatever reason, I just think it's important to know that it's very normal, and that it also can happen. It can happen 6 months into your new mom experience.
Yeah, and that probably even the pandemic and all the stressors that came with that. I'm sure those numbers are not even, they're going to keep growing with all the stressors that we have now.
I definitely do not recommend having a baby during a pandemic.
You were one of them.
It
That's
was very
true.
stressful, but who knew it was coming, right?
Thank you again, Brenda, for being with us, and for all of our listeners. Until next time.
This episode is brought to you in part by our affiliate relationship with Audible. You may not know this about the three of us, but we are big time readers and we love Audible, especially Elizabeth. She's a big fan of the audiobooks.
I love, love, love audiobooks. I have one going all the time and I get so many books in that way. Makes me so happy to listen while I'm doing other things.
Yeah, it really does make the time pass quickly when you're like washing dishes and also listening to something awesome. So, guys, if you want to take advantage of this, we have a free 30-day trial. If you go to our link, audibletrial.com/wellness rebranded, you will get 1 credit or 2 credits if you're already a Prime member, good for any premium selection title, and you get to keep those. You'll also get the entire Audible catalog of podcasts, books, guided wellness, originals, and you'll have unlimited listening, and it will help us keep the show going for you. So please check out our link in the show notes.
Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.